Bava Batra, Daf Kuf Lamed Hey Amud Beis and Kuf Lamed Vav Amud Aleph. The gift מהיום ולאחר מיתה. The Choves Havovas puts the Shar HaBechina before Shar Avodas Elokim. He structures his sefer very, very carefully, and particularly it starts with Shar HaYichud, which is metaphysical, and then comes Shar HaBechina, which is noticing nature, understanding science, seeing the world around you. We've spoken about that a few times in the last few weeks, how important that is. We learned just the other day in terms of learning from the world, that the whole world becomes your Rebbe, the universe becomes your Sforim, your source of input, of understanding of Hashem. That's the Shar HaBechina. And then comes Shar Avodat Elokim. You would think it would start with Shar Avodat Elokim, starting with the service of God and then going into other areas. But it starts with Bechina because his whole structure of the Sefer is built on Hakarat HaTov, that the foundation of service of God is as an act of appreciation, of gratitude to Hashem. So you've got to understand the greatness of Hashem before you can feel the gratitude. That Avodat Elokim doesn't even start if you don't feel a sense of gratitude. And he explains that's why the Aseret HaDibra starts with, the Ten Commandments starts with Ani Hashem Elokechem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim. I took you out of Egypt, so you owe me something. That's the beginning, that's the foundation of Avodas Hashem. Unless one feels indebtedness, there is no reason to serve. One serves because one feels a level of indebtedness. So first is Shar HaBechina, and then it's Shar Avodas Elokim. Rabbi Eliezer Dessler in the first book of Michtav Miliot takes that idea further and says, in fact, when you do something out of gratitude, you establish a link of love that exceeds any other kind of link of love that one can have. Because when you do something out of gratitude, rather than following an instruction, you're the giver instead of the taker. If you're following the instruction, Hashem is your master and you are his servant and you do what he tells you to do, that's fine. But that you're not giving him anything, you're not gifting anything. You're doing what he's told you to do. You're receiving instructions from him. But if you do it as an act of recognition, when you appreciate and you give somebody a gift out of appreciation, you are investing in that other person. And in the case of Avodat Elokim, that is based on gratitude, Rabbi Lapin says you're investing in the Rebbeinu Shem. You're giving the Rebbeinu Shem something of yours, and that act of giving creates a bond of love that exceeds any other bond of love that one can create. Giving is his whole system in Kuntrus HaChesed is that giving creates love. It's not that you give because you love because you give, and that's how he explains why parents love children more than children love parents. Because the parents are the givers to a greater degree. Gifting is a gift of life. You can only gift when you're alive. Only live people and humans can gift. So it's an incredibly important aspect of life, and that's why Ani Chashuv Kamet, the Gemara says in the Dorim, Daf Samach Dalet. If you don't have any money, if you're impoverished, you're like a dead person. Because you can't give. What is a live person if you can't give? That's what life is, as we learned 2 weeks ago on Daf Kuf Tez Zayin. That was the whole idea. You remember Rabbi Pinchas ben Chama, who said, "Kashe aniyut b'toch beito shel adam yoter mi-50 makot." That poverty is worse than 50 makos, like the makos that were given to the Egyptians, the plagues that were given to the Egyptians. Poverty is worse than 50 of those plagues. Think how terrible those plagues were. And poverty is worse. Why? As we learned on Daf Kuf Tez Zayin, because poverty denies you the opportunity of giving. And giving is one of the gifts of life. That's one of the most wonderful things of life. If one's not alive, one cannot give. Why can't you give if you're not alive? That sounds like a ridiculous question, but it's actually not. Why is gifting a function of life and can't be done after life, can't be done in death? To that, the Rashbam gives two different answers, one on Kuf Lamed Hey and the other on Kuf Lamed Vav, just a few lines further on in the Gemara. Sometimes when you're learning Daf Yomi and you learn one Daf on Monday and the next Daf on Tuesday, you forget that there's only one word between yesterday and today. You package yesterday's stuff, this is today's stuff, but it's continuous, and you understand that the Rashbam says one thing on Daf Kuf Lamed Hey Amud Beis, and a few lines further, it happens to be the next day's Daf, but it's only a few lines further, he says something different. Let's have a look and see. On Daf Kuf Lamed Vav, in our Gemara, the Mishnah says, Hakotev nechasav lebanav, if you want to give your children your property, and you still while you're alive. Tzarich shichtov מהיום ולאחר מיתה divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says you've got to say, the wording of the document is, I'm giving you this from now until tomorrow. We learned yesterday that there's certain kinyanim which extend over a period of time. We talked about yibum that starts under the chuppah and continues until the act of yibum. The kinyan itself has a lifetime. So too one can begin a gift giving at a particular time, and it continues, the gifting continues over a period of time until the person dies. Explains the Rashbam, why would one want to do this? Your sons are going to inherit in any case. Why are you getting complicated? So he says, well, there's a complicated situation. This is a situation where a man is getting married for the second time. He's giving his second wife a very big ksuva. She's a young woman who wouldn't marry the old guy unless he gave her a really big ksuva. She says, okay, you want a young pretty girl like me to live with you, old man, that's okay if you give me a ksuba of $5 million. He says, okay, he's desperately in love, he gives her a ksuba of $5 million. The problem is, what about his children? Now all of his property become mortgaged to her. She has a lien on all of his property for that amount of $5 million. And now she's got children from the first wife. He's got children from the first wife. They're going to inherit nothing. So this is the way he gets around that. He says, I'm giving my property to my children before I die. But I need the income from the property, so I'm not giving the income. This is a gift over time. It starts off, I'm giving you the capital. So immediately it's out of the clutches of my new wife. It's yours. But you can't have the income from the property while I'm alive because I'm living on the income. That's how he structures the gift. Says the Rashbam, the reason he has to say, I'm giving it to you from now, he can't say, I'm giving it to you as a gift after I die. At that time, he doesn't have ownership of his property anymore. The moment he dies, he releases ownership. Ownership goes to the children. And if that time he's going to only give the gift at that time, that's too late. By that time, the second wife already has a lien on the property. So the reason that he cannot act after his death, he cannot set in motion while he's alive a kinyan which will take effect after he dies. It's a little bit like we discussed after the show yesterday we were talking about. He can't set that in motion. Why? Because after the moment he dies, he's no longer the owner. He lacks ownership of that which he's trying to gift. You can only gift something that is yours. You can't gift something that doesn't belong to you. That's what the Rashbam says. However, on the previous Amud, the Rashbam said, when the Gemara said, Ezehi matana, what is a matana? What is a gift? And we're talking particularly about a gift that a man wants to give while he's alive, but only to take effect after he's died. For example, a similar situation, a man wants to give his property to a friend, but meanwhile he wants to get the benefit of the revenue from the property. So he says the same kind of thing. That's how you gift. You say, this property is yours from now, and once I die, you will also get the income. So it's an extended gift. There the Rashbam says, previous Amud at the beginning of the thick lines, says the Rashbam, the reason he has to word it that way is because he can't give the gift after he's dead. Now, why not? We know already from today's Gemara, we should know the reason you can't give up after you've died is because it's no longer yours, but that's not what the Rashbam says. The Rashbam says you can no longer give after you've died because a person that loses the capacity to give, being makne, giving something, is something a living person can do. Implying, even if you owned it, even if you did have ownership after you died, you still couldn't give it to somebody else. So we've got two different reasons given in the Rashbam. One is you lack ownership, and the other is you lack capacity to give. Interestingly, there's a Rashi in Gittin, a third place where this appears. Rashbam's grandfather and Rebbe in Gittin writes in a situation there where imasar shtar matana lishlucho litno lacher, if I take a shaliach, I give something over to FedEx to deliver to somebody else overseas. Umes, and the person dies before FedEx gets to the recipient. Lo yitain la'achar mita. FedEx should not deliver it after death. Because the receiver only acquires it after he gets the document from FedEx. And at that time, the giver is no longer an owner, is no longer in a position to be able to give it. So he's given something that doesn't belong to him. He's trying to receive something that doesn't belong to him. That belongs to the heirs. It's too late for FedEx to deliver the piece. Once again, Rashi says pakale reshutei. So I understand in Gittin why Rashi says pakale reshutei, this particular thing, that he lacks ownership, because there we're dealing with a shiliach. And the Tzos HaChoshen says something similar. There is dealing with a shiliach, which means, yes, I don't have capacity to give after I'm dead, but I've given it to FedEx. They're alive. The shiliach can deliver. Yes, the shiliach can deliver. It's not a problem of capacity, but the shiliach is delivering something that no longer belongs to you, and therefore cannot belong to the recipient because it belonged to somebody else before that. So I understand in Gittin, where we're talking about a shiliach, I understand why Rashi has to introduce this idea of pakale reshutei. But in our Gemara and our Mishnah, where the Rashbam has just said the problem is one of capacity, not ownership. He's just said that on the previous Amud. Why introduce a new idea here and say it's not, apart from the fact that you don't have capacity, you don't have ownership either? Why even introduce that? Nachronim talk about that to some degree. But I think in order to understand the Rashbam, you've got to ask another question on the Rashbam, and that is, why does the Rashbam go to all this length of explaining the case study, which isn't in the Mishnah? He creates the case study himself. This is a man who was married to a woman, she dies or he divorces her, he's got children from the woman, he falls in love with this new young girl. The Rashbam doesn't say young girl, that I'm putting in for effect. But and he falls in love with this new young girl, she demands a big ksuba. The Rashbam doesn't say she demands, he just says he gives her a ksuba. And now she has a lien on the property, so he wants to circumvent her rights so as to ensure that the sons of the first wife have what they deserve to get, which is the property. So he develops this idea in order to do so. Why does the Rashbam even say that? The Mishnah just says, Hakotev nechasav levanav. Why give us that whole scenario? Because the Rashbam is telling us that this is different. Here we're talking about Yerusha. And Yerusha is not the same as gifting. On the previous Amud, although it's only a few lines further, we're talking about a different case. We're talking about a matana. The Gemara there says, Ezohi matana. How do you gift something to a stranger? I want to give a piece of my property to a friend of mine before I die. How do I do that as a gift is what the Gemara is talking about. It's got nothing to do with Yerusha. The person I'm giving it to is not a Yoresh. The person I'm giving it to is not an heir. That says the Rashbam, but the case in the Mishnah, the person I'm giving it to is an heir. And with Yerusha, it's different, based on everything we've been learning from the beginning of Yesh Nochlim, the idea of Nochel, the idea of a Nachal, the naturalness of flow from father to son, from bequeather to heir, is a natural flow. It happens automatically. So Rashbam is telling us, here I can't use the reason that I gave before, that he has no capacity after death. Because you do have the capacity to be Moirish after death. Not only can you be Moirish, you can be Yoresh after death. You can inherit and you can bequeath after death. We know in Daf Yomi we had that a father, if a man dies in the Parsha of Tzlochet and he doesn't leave a son, he doesn't leave a daughter, who does it go back to? The father. And what happens if the father's not alive? It goes to the father's sons, the brothers of the deceased. And if the brothers of the deceased are no longer alive, it goes to the sons of the brothers of the deceased, to the nephews of the deceased. How does that all work, says the Gemara? Because the father inherits in his grave and bequeaths in his grave to the brothers, to his sons. And they inherit in the grave and they bequeath in the grave. So the Rashbam can't say here what he said there, that you don't have how can a man give after he's dead and buried? Yes, that you can say. But how can a man be Moirish? How can a man bequeath after you're dead and buried? You can. We see on Daf Yomi. We see in the Chumash that you can do that in the Torah. You can inherit and bequeath even after death. Therefore, says the Rashbam, in our case, there's a different reason altogether. The reason is you don't have ownership, not that you don't have capacity. After death, you don't have capacity to gift but you do have capacity to bequeath. And there's a hint of that in the Rimi Gash, where the Rimi Gash learns the same way as the Rashbam does here. And he says, because La'achar Mitta he let le mididi ki hechi deliknu lehu, he doesn't own anything that he can give to somebody else, La'achrini, ela nichse de yorshin ninu, because it already belongs to the yorshin. There we're dealing with dinim of Yerusha, and that's completely different from giving. And with that, we understand that we talked about gifting and what a gift it is to be able to gift, and that it's a gift of life. But it's also important, the contrast between gifting and Yerusha, to realize that when a son inherits from a father, it's not a gift. When a person inherits, a gift is, I've got something, it belongs to me, and I want to give it to you. That means I will no longer have it. I have the golden Rolex that Meish is. Meish here. Meish, the golden Rolex. Did you bring it? Did you bring the golden Rolex with you? Oh, there you got it. That's right. The famous golden Rolex, I lend it to Meish to use, because it's embarrassing to walk around with a golden Rolex. So the golden Rolex of the Matmonim, Meish is the shomer. He takes care of the golden Rolex of the Matmonim. And if I want to give it the golden Rolex to Meish, not just that he should be a trustee, then from then on I don't have it anymore. That's a gift. That's why a gift is generous. But an inheritance is not that. An inheritance is not, I no longer have it, I'm giving it to you. I'm dead, so what can I do with it? So you might as well have it. It's natural that it should go to you. It's not the same as a gift. If you want to give a gift, give it in your lifetime. Give it when it means something. If you're inheriting it, that's nice. That's something that happens automatically. But what's important to understand is that when the son inherits also, it's not just inheriting as a gift. The son is inheriting something which is natural. The father can inherit even after death. Because a child doesn't only inherit material things from a father. A child doesn't only inherit the golden Rolex. A child inherits midot, he inherits character traits. A child inherits intelligence. A child inherits yichus. A child inherits knowledge. A child inherits all sorts of intangibles from a parent. And that inheritance continues after death as well. It's not just that the child inherits that at the moment of death and then everything's gone. That inheritance goes on and on. How often does the child understand something about his father or mother years after they've passed on? And the person understands and gets it and absorbs that and integrates it into their lives. The inheritance of a child to a father is something that is la'achar mitta as well. Gifts can only be given during life. But an inheritance is an ongoing receiving of a child from a father. And that's why the laws of Avelus for a parent are so different from the laws of Avelus for anybody else. My brother was discussing it with me a few days ago. As you know, he had a sad loss of a daughter. And we were talking about the difference in Dinei Avelus, that no matter how sad a person is at the loss of a child, sometimes even more than at the loss of a parent, but the Avelus for the loss of a child is 30 days, and the Avelus for the loss of a parent is 12 months. Why is that so? It's so because the 12-month Avelut for a parent is not about Avelut. Avelut ends after 30 days. The 12 months of Avelut for a parent is Kibud Aveim, is to continue recognizing, I continue to receive from my parent. The inheritance is La'achar Mitta as well. I continue to inherit, and as I continue to inherit, I owe my parents something. And that's part of the 12 months, to continue saying Kaddish and to be aware of the parent and to honor the parent, because that's an ongoing process. A gift can only be given in lifetime, but once you're given the gift, it's over. It was mine and now it's yours. Yerusha is something that can happen after life, after death as well. And Yerusha is ongoing. A child continues and continues and continues to inherit all sorts of strengths and talents and capabilities and capacities from their deceased parents.